In this lesson video, we will continue discussing cell references relativity. This time, we will focus on the mixed cell reference. In addition, we will also discuss the round function and also the technique for editing multiple cells quickly using Ctrl-Enter. For this lesson, we will just use the file provided in a previous lesson. You can open the last worksheet, which is called mixed. For now, don't worry too much about how you can combine and separate cells like this. Inshallah, we will discuss this later in the next few lessons about table structure. Let's focus now on how to write mixed type cell references. As with the previous worksheet, in this worksheet, we also need to calculate the final grades for the students using percentage weight. The difference is that the weight values are now placed in the top cells. 25% for the assignments, 35% for the midterm exam, and 40% for the final exam. The challenge is, how can we create a formula that can work for these three columns at once? If we start with this cell D4, here we need to multiply cell C4 with D2. So type in equal symbol, C4 times D2. Now, based on our previous discussion, C4 is supposed to be relative, but this D2 should be absolute because this 25% value only exists in cell D2. It does not exist on the other cells. So click on the cell address, then press F4 to convert it to absolute. Press Enter, and then press Ctrl-tilde to see the formula. In this condition, if we autofill it to the bottom, the formula will work. But if we use this formula in column F and H, it will not work because it will not reference these 35% and 40% values. So the main problem here is that we need to make the row number 2 absolute, but the column letter D relative. We want it to remain relative so that it changes when we duplicate the formula to other cells. The trick is to remove the dollar sign from the left side of the letter D. And our problem is solved. This type of cell reference is what we call mixed, because it is a combination of relative and absolute addresses. Besides editing them manually, you can also click on the cell address, then press F4, and press again a few times. We can see that Excel will cycle the cell address from relative type, absolute type, mixed with absolute row, and mixed with an absolute column. Then it will loop back to the relative type. For now, what we need is the mixed type with an absolute row. If you are done, just press Enter. To duplicate the formula to the cells below, we can use the autofill feature. To duplicate to the other columns, we can use the various copy-paste methods that we've discussed earlier. For example, we can select this cell, then press Ctrl-C to copy, then click drag here to make a selection, then press Ctrl-V to paste. We can see that every formula in this column already references cell F2 above as we expected. Another way to duplicate the formulas in this column to this one is to use the cell selection method. So first, select the cells that we want to duplicate, then move our mouse cursor over the edge of the selection, hold Ctrl, and click drag the selection to column H. And the result is as we expected. If we press Ctrl-tilde, we can see that the formulas in this column all referencing the cell H2 above them. Next, we need to calculate the students' final grades in this score column. I will use this opportunity to discuss the round function and also the technique of editing several cells at once using the Ctrl-Enter method. I'll cover the basics first and then after that the implementation. For the Ctrl-Enter method, if we select several cells like this, then we type in a data, for example 1, 2, 3, then press Enter. We can see that only the cell at the top left changed. The other cells, although they are selected, didn't change. Let me undo this first. If we type 1, 2, 3 again, but then we press Ctrl-Enter, we can see that all the cells we selected will be filled with the same data. So, you can think of this method as a more instant copy-paste method than the usual. Now, let's discuss the round function. We use this function to round a number to the nearest whole value. The way it works is, first, we need to input the value we want to round, then a comma, then the number of digits after the decimal symbol. For example, if we select the cell, then type the equal symbol, then round, opening parenthesis, and type in a long decimal number, for example, 12.3456, then a comma, then enter 0, for example, then press enter. The result is 12 with no additional numbers after the decimal symbol. But if we change this value to 2, for example, then enter. Now the result is 12.35. So now there are 2 digits after the decimal symbol. That is the basics. Pretty easy, right? Now the challenge is, how can we use this round function on the sum values of these 3 columns? The trick is to replace the input number with the sum function. Let's just see this in action, and we will also try the Control Enter technique. Let me first delete all the cells so we have a cleaner worksheet. Then, create a selection like this. Use the formula bar by clicking here. We use the formula bar because later we need to select the cells with the mouse, just to make things easier later. Type the equal symbol, then type ROU, then press Tab to use the auto suggest feature. Now type in sum, then press Tab again. Unlike before, we will now use the sum function by inputting several separated cell addresses. To do this, first we click on this cell, then press comma, then click on this cell, then press comma again, and click on this cell, then the closing parenthesis, then comma, and now we need to determine how many digits will be after the decimal. We just want 0, and then closing parenthesis, and finally, instead of pressing enter, hold down the control key first, and then press enter. And alhamdulillah, it is done. To check the formulas, you can press Ctrl tilde again. We can see that the result is as we expected.